Imagine waking up light years from everything you've ever known. You are confined to a wheelchair, your old life is just completely shattered, and you're carrying the weight of a world that basically chewed you up and spit you out.
Yeah, a really bleak starting point.
Exactly. But you aren't sent to this distant alien moon to conquer it. You're sent there to inhabit a completely different body.
Right.
You are offered this towering, blue-skinned physical form, one that allows you to walk, to run, to breathe in a toxic but incredibly beautiful world.
It's a total sensory reset.
It is. It's like stepping into a vivid dream, but the dream feels more real than your actual reality.
Right.
So the question I want to pose to you, the listener, is this. If you were offered a second chance at life in a completely different physical form, at what point does that costume become your true identity?
And that tension, that exact tension between the vessel we inhabit and the identity we claim, that's what we are dissecting today.
Yeah.
We are taking a complete immersive narrative journey through the living world of Pandora.
Which is just a massive undertaking.
It really is. Our mission for this deep dive is to examine the collision of two fundamentally opposed ways of existing. And we're doing it through the lens of a broken man named Jake Sully.
Right.
Because on one side, you have an ideology driven by extraction, force, and profit. And on the other, there's this profound biological connection to an entire planetary ecosystem.
I want to start right there, actually, with Jake. Because to understand the alien world he steps into, we really, really have to look at the world he's leaving behind.
Absolutely. You can't separate the two.
He's a former Marine. He's paralyzed from the waist down. He describes having this massive hole blown through the middle of his life. But the Earth he comes from isn't exactly a place that fosters healing, is it?
No, not at all. The context of Earth in this timeline is just so crucial. It informs literally every decision the humans make on Pandora. Earth is, it's ecologically devastated.
The completely depleted economy.
Precisely. It's a place of absolute scarcity. And in a society defined by scarcity, an injured veteran like Jake Sully is basically viewed as surplus to requirements. He is cynical, he's battered, and he's entirely lost.
But the mechanism that actually gets him onto the ship to Pandora is, well, it sets up the central tragedy of his character right from the start.
Right, because he isn't recruited for his tactical mind or his survival skills.
No, he's recruited because of a biological loophole. His identical twin brother was this highly trained scientist who spent years preparing for this mission. But then his brother's murdered on Earth just for the paper money in his wallet.
Just a senseless, violent act.
Yeah, and because Jake shares identical DNA with his brother, the corporate entity running the Pandora operation they just slot him in.
He is literally a replacement part.
Exactly, a replacement part for a very expensive piece of biological machinery.
The Avatar program. You see, the corporate backers, the Resources Development Administration, they've poured billions into growing these avatar bodies.
They're genetic hybrids, right?
Yeah. Human DNA mixed with the DNA of the indigenous Pandoran species, the Na'vi. So when his brother dies, that multi-million-dollar avatar body is totally useless without an operator who shares that exact genetic sequence.
They just need a warm body with the right genes.
Jake is brought in merely to fill a seat. And it establishes his initial psychology so perfectly, he feels entirely disposable.
Let's talk about the environment that disposable man is dropped into, because the descent onto Pandora is just this masterclass in visual whiplash.
Oh, the contrast is staggering.
You have this breathtakingly lush, primeval landscape. It's vibrant, it's teeming with life, but then scarred right into the middle of it is this massive, lifeless mining crater.
Right.
And at the edge of that crater is the human colony, Hell's Gate.
Hell's Gate functions as both a psychological and a physical fortress because the atmosphere on Pandora contains high levels of carbon dioxide and hydrogen sulfide.
It's toxic to humans in minutes.
Exactly. So the humans are perpetually trapped behind exopacks and thick reinforced glass. They have completely isolated themselves from the ecosystem.
Which explains their perimeter defense. It's an armed camp under constant siege. You've got these automated sentry guns just tearing up the tree line.
And those towering mechanized amp suits.
Oh, man, yeah. Basically 4-meter tall walking tanks patrolling the mud. The entire posture of the base is just It's defensive paranoia. They don't see an ecosystem. They see a hostile threat that has to be dominated.
And that doctrine of domination is perfectly embodied by the head of security, the scarred veteran who runs the military side of things. He views Pandora purely through a militaristic lens.
He believes overwhelming preemptive force is the only language the environment understands.
Right. And what's fascinating is how quickly he identifies Jake's vulnerability. He pulls Jake aside almost immediately.
He looks at this paralyzed former Marine,
Mm.
a guy who feels totally alienated from the science team he's supposed to be protecting, and he just offers him a deal.
It's a brilliant manipulation.
He tells Jake to be his inside man, to gather tactical intelligence on the indigenous Na'vi. And in exchange, he promises to use corporate funds to get Jake the spinal surgery he needs to walk again back on Earth.
It's the ultimate leverage, a purely transactional relationship, which, frankly, mirrors the entire human endeavor on Pandora.
Yeah, because that endeavor is managed by a corporate administrator who isn't a military man at all. He's an accountant.
His entire reality is dictated by the quarterly statement. He is on Pandora for one reason only: the superconductor.
I want to pause on that mineral for a second, because the science behind it is what drives this entire conflict. It's a room temperature superconductor, right?
Right.
Why is that so valuable?
Well, if you have a room temperature superconductor, you essentially eliminate all electrical resistance.
Which is the holy grail of physics.
Exactly. It revolutionizes energy generation, magnetic levitation, deep space travel. On an Earth that has completely depleted its fossil fuels and is desperate for energy, this mineral isn't just a luxury.
It is the absolute foundation of their civilization's survival.
Yes. That macroeconomic desperation is what makes the administrator so ruthless. To him, the Na'vi are not a sovereign people. They are merely a biological obstacle sitting on top of the mother lode.
But, not everyone in Hell's Gate shares that view. You have the head of the Avatar program, this fierce, chain-smoking scientist who approaches Pandora with deep empathy and curiosity.
She represents the path of understanding.
Right. She's trying to figure out the world through botany, through building schools for the Na'vi, through diplomacy. She is incredibly resentful of the military, but she's also pretty resentful of Jake at first.
Oh, she makes no secret of it. To her, Jake is just some uneducated military guy. She needed a brilliant scientist, and instead, she got a Marine with no academic background.
So Jake enters this highly volatile environment, completely unwanted by the scientists and secretly manipulated by the military.
But that entire dynamic shifts the absolute second he enters the Link unit.
The Link unit. This technology is wild. It bridges the human mind and the avatar body. It basically looks like a sensory deprivation MRI machine.
Right, he lies down in this pod. The biometric scanners lock in, and his consciousness is essentially broadcast into the avatar body.
Which is floating in a medical tank in the next room. I try to imagine the neuroscience of this. You are taking a human brain and mapping its neural outputs to an entirely different biological structure.
The sensory shock must be staggering. I mean, the human brain is suddenly processing input from a body that is 10 feet tall. It has a tail for balance. It possesses carbon fiber reinforced bone.
And a completely different center of gravity.
Exactly. But for Jake, the dominant sensation isn't disorientation. It is a profound neurological resurrection.
He opens his eyes in the avatar body. He looks down, and he has legs. Blue, muscular, working legs.
The medical staff are trying to run standard motor control tests, but he just ignores them.
He pushes right past them, disconnects the biomonitors, and just stumbles out of the lab. And within seconds, he isn't just walking. He is in a dead sprint across the compound garden.
He's digging his toes into the soil, taking massive, unfiltered breaths of the Pandoran air.
Think about the psychological implications of that moment. He has spent years defined by his lack of mobility, trapped in a failing body on a failing planet.
And now he's thrust into an apex physical form. It's not just relief, it's a sensory explosion.
Yeah, and this immediate euphoria sets the foundation for a very dangerous psychological addiction. The avatar state rapidly becomes his preferred reality.
While his human body back in the metal pod becomes the prison.
But the reality of Pandora outside those electrified fences is, it's incredibly unforgiving. Jake's arrogance as a Marine bleeds right into his first expedition into the rainforest.
He treats it like a walk in the park.
He's out there with the scientists. And the Pandoran forest is this cyan-tinted gloom. Everything is hyperscaled. And Jake just wanders off and unwittingly provokes a massive beast.
A giant herbivore. It's essentially a six-legged rhinoceros with a massive armored crest, easily the size of a terrestrial house.
Jake's initial reaction is pure bravado. He stands his ground, levels his rifle, and screams at this creature.
And surprisingly, it actually flares its crest, bellows, and then backs off.
Jake thinks he's just intimidated an alien dinosaur. He's feeling pretty good about himself. But the realization sets in quickly. That massive beast wasn't running from him.
Not at all. It was fleeing a far more efficient killer.
The apex terrestrial predator of the forest.
Imagine a glistening black panther-like creature, 6 legs, armored plating, and an articulated sensory-laden jaw that could easily bite through the metal chassis of a truck.
The chase that follows is pure nightmare fuel. The predator doesn't just pursue Jake, it shatters the environment to get to him.
Tearing through massive tree trunks like they are matchsticks?
Jake is stripped of his weapon, his pack, everything that makes him a soldier. He only survives by throwing himself off a massive cliff into a river below.
Just barely escaping with his life.
But when he pulls himself out of the water, he is completely alone. Night is falling, and he's a stranger in the most dangerous ecosystem imaginable.
This transition into night is a critical phase in understanding Pandoran biology. As the sun sets, the forest undergoes this profound transformation.
It becomes a glowing, surreal wonderland.
Bioluminescence everywhere. Almost every plant and animal emits light. From an evolutionary standpoint, this suggests a highly competitive environment where light is used for signaling, mating, or luring prey in the deep canopy gloom.
It is stunningly beautiful, but for Jake, it is an absolute death trap. He is trying to fashion a crude torch, right? Making a massive amount of noise.
Basically broadcasting his location to every predator within miles.
Exactly. He is swiftly surrounded by a pack of these slick, vicious, pack-hunting carnivores.
Viper wolves.
He's fighting them off with a knife, swinging his torch, but there are just too many.
They're pulling him down, and just as he is about to be overrun, a solitary Na'vi warrior drops silently from the canopy.
Neytiri. And her intervention is not an act of rescue, really.
Yeah.
It is an act of ecological maintenance. Right. She dispatches the pack with fluid, lethal efficiency using her bow and a blade. But we have to look closely at what she does immediately after the threat is neutralized.
There is no triumph.
No, she is furious. But she's not just angry at Jake. She is actively mourning the animal she just killed. She kneels over a dying creature, speaks a prayer in Na'vi, and ends its suffering.
To her, this wasn't a victory. It was a tragic waste of life, and she blames Jake entirely.
Her perspective is rooted in their philosophy of energy conservation and biological balance, isn't it?
Yes, the animals didn't need to die. They were simply reacting to Jake's ignorant, disruptive presence. He's a chaotic anomaly in a balanced system.
She tells him in broken English that it is his fault for acting like a baby, making noise, not understanding the forest. She views him with complete disdain and demands he go back to his own kind.
But as she turns to leave him in the dark, the ecosystem itself intervenes.
A cluster of glowing, floating seeds begins to drift down from the canopy. They look like ethereally glowing dandelion seeds, but they pulse with a very specific, deliberate light.
Wood sprites.
Right, and they converge entirely on Jake. He is covered in them. And to his credit, he doesn't panic. He just stands still, letting them rest on him.
This moment fundamentally alters the trajectory of the narrative. Neytiri recognizes these wood sprites as highly pure spirits, the seeds of the sacred tree of souls.
To the Na'vi, this is a direct, undeniable sign from Ewa.
I'm glad you brought up Ewa, because from the human perspective, Ewa sounds like a localized deity, a myth.
But what is Ewa really?
We'll delve deeper into the biological mechanics of it later, but essentially, Ewa is the guiding consciousness of Pandora. The Na'vi don't worship Ewa as a distant god in the sky. They interact with her as a tangible biological network that connects all living things on the moon.
So when the seeds of this network land on a destructive, ignorant outsider, Neytiri is forced to override her own judgment.
Exactly. She interprets this as the will of the ecosystem. She cannot leave him. She must bring him to her clan.
She leads him through this glowing, phantasmagorical forest until they reach Home Tree. And Home Tree, it just defies human architectural logic.
It's massive.
A massive, ancient tree that stands hundreds of meters tall. The entire clan lives within its giant, spiraling root system. It is a living, breathing cathedral.
When Jake is brought inside, the reception is overwhelmingly hostile. The clan has had interactions with the humans before. They know about the guns and the bulldozers.
Jake is brought before the clan leadership, the stern patriarch, and the matriarch, who is the clan's spiritual leader.
The matriarch approaches Jake with intense scrutiny. She strikes his chest with a sharp thorn, drawing a drop of blood, and tastes it on her tongue.
Which is wild. She is quite literally analyzing his biological chemistry.
Yes. She tells him that it is hard to fill a cup that is already full, She assumes he possesses the same rigid, arrogant mindset as the other humans.
But Jake does something highly unusual for an invading force. He admits his own ignorance. He tells her that he has absolutely nothing figured out. He openly acknowledges that he knows nothing about their world.
And that single admission of vulnerability saves his life. The matriarch senses that he isn't blinded by corporate greed or rigid scientific dogma.
So she makes a highly controversial decision. She tasks her own daughter, Neytiri, with teaching Jake their ways, to see if his human insanity can be cured.
Which initiates an intense, grueling period of cultural and physical immersion. Neytiri becomes his instructor, and the training is relentless.
He has to learn a complex tonal language. He has to learn how to track, how to hunt, and how to navigate the dizzying heights of the forest canopy.
But the most crucial thing he learns isn't a physical skill, it's a biological interface, the neural cue. Neytiri teaches him about the bond.
Explain the actual mechanics of this, because it's not magic, is it?
Not at all. It is a macrosynaptic connection. The Na'vi and almost all animals on Pandora possess an external bundle of nerve endings, typically housed within a protective cue of hair or specialized appendages.
Right.
When these exposed neural fibers are pressed together, they form a direct electrochemical bridge between two separate nervous systems.
So when Jake makes the bond with a dire horse, those six-legged mounts they ride, he isn't just steering it with his knees. He is directly interfacing with its motor cortex.
Exactly. He can feel the animal's heartbeat, its muscle tension, its intent. It requires a complete synchronization of will.
It's a literal biological internet, a way of sharing sensory data and emotional states across species barriers.
This evolutionary adaptation likely developed as a highly efficient means of predator evasion and environmental harmonization.
As Jake masters these skills, we see this incredible psychological schism developing. In his avatar body, he is thriving. He is agile, respected, and deeply attuned to the environment.
But back at Hell's Gate, his human body is rapidly deteriorating.
The contrast is so stark. He is spending 12, 14 hours a day in the link pod. He neglects basic human hygiene. He's eating microwave rations cold just to get back into the pod faster.
The metal shack of the human world has become a temporary, annoying pause in his true life, which is out in the jungle.
This dual existence builds toward his ultimate test as a warrior, claiming a mountain banshee. They travel to the Hallelujah Mountains, and this environment alone is a physics anomaly.
Oh, it's incredible.
You have massive islands of rock covered in jungle, literally floating in the sky.
This is where the superconductor mineral is most concentrated. It interacts with Pandora's intense magnetic field. The magnetic forces repel the superconductor so strongly that massive geological formations are suspended in midair.
It creates a vertical, treacherous landscape. Jake has to climb these floating cliffs to reach the banshee rookery. And bonding with a banshee isn't like breaking a horse.
No, Neytiri warns him that the banshee doesn't just submit, it chooses the rider.
And the way you know it has chosen you is that it immediately tries to kill you.
It is a test of dominance and spiritual alignment. The predator must respect the rider's strength before it allows the neural interface.
Jake steps out onto this precipice, surrounded by these massive, screeching, leathery-winged predators. One singles him out, and a brutal, visceral wrestling match ensues right on the edge of the cliff.
The beast is snapping its jaws, thrashing.
Jake is taking a severe beating, but he manages to pin its head, grabs its neural whip, and forcefully connects his own cue.
The moment the synaptic cleft closes, the violence ceases instantly. The biochemical feedback loop is established. The banshee's pupils dilate, it calms.
But their first flight is purely terrifying. The banshee bucks them off the cliff, and they plummet toward the canopy.
He has to learn how to fly it through neural commands in a matter of seconds.
But when they finally pull up and catch the wind, the exhilaration is absolute. He is no longer a clumsy tourist. He has earned his place in the sky.
This rite of passage secures his acceptance into the clan. Upon returning, he undergoes a formal ritual. He is formally embraced by the patriarch.
It's a powerful community moment. The patriarch places his hands on Jake's shoulders, and the entire clan presses in, laying their hands on each other, creating a physical chain of connection that links Jake to the whole.
He is formally named a son of the clan. He finally has the one thing the earth denied him: belonging.
And that sense of belonging culminates in his relationship with Neytiri. The dynamic between them shifts from teacher and student to equals.
It happens in the Tree of Voices, a secluded, sacred grove of glowing willow trees.
The Na'vi use these trees to connect with the memories of their ancestors, utilizing the planetary neural network.
Underneath these glowing tendrils, Jake and Neytiri finally admit their failings for each other. They make the neural bond not for transport or hunting, but for intimacy. They mate for life.
It is the absolute zenith of his journey. He has found purpose, community, and love, but we really have to analyze the massive, looming contradiction here. Jake is living a profound lie.
Right, he is a son of the clan, but he is still technically a corporate spy.
He knows and has known for months that the massive human bulldozers are slowly clearing a path toward Hometree, because the largest deposit of the mineral in a 200-mile radius is located directly underneath the roots of their tree.
He has completely failed his primary mission, which was to convince them to relocate.
He was hoping for a compromise that was never mathematically possible.
The corporate machine does not compromise with what it considers to be primitive obstacles, and that reality violently intrudes the very next morning.
Jake and Neytiri wake up in the tranquil beauty of the Tree of Voices to a sound that just vibrates in your teeth. It's the roar of massive turbine engines.
They look up, and the forest canopy is being systematically shredded by these gargantuan autonomous bulldozers.
The machines are blindly grinding the sacred glowing willows into sawdust.
It is the physical manifestation of the ideological collision. A blind, deaf machine of industry annihilating a biological repository of generational memory.
The human operators inside the machines are looking at screens, completely insulated from the destruction they are causing.
Jake's reaction is frantic. He runs directly in front of the massive blades, screaming at the machines.
He climbs onto the hood of one and smashes the sensory camera arrays with a rock, blinding the operators back at Hell's Gate. He successfully stops the convoy, but in doing so, he reveals his betrayal to the military.
He is no longer their inside man. He is an active insurgent.
The head of security's retaliation is swift and clinical. He recognizes that the Avatar program has gone rogue, so he initiates a hard system override on Jake and the science team's link pods.
While Jake is still out in the forest, trying to comfort Neytiri, his connection is violently severed.
He is thrown back into his crippled human body inside the metal pod at Hell's Gate, just gasping for air. It's a brutal whiplash.
They pull Jake into the command center. The satellite feeds show the Na'vi warriors amassing at Hometree, painting themselves for war, preparing to attack the bulldozers.
And the administrator uses this as justification for military escalation. He argues that the Na'vi are instigating violence.
Jake begs for one last chance. He tells them that if they attack Hometree, it will be a slaughter. He negotiates an ultimatum. They give him 1 hour to link back in and convince the clan to evacuate before the gunships arrive.
When Jake links back into his avatar, he faces the most agonizing moment of the narrative. He stands before the leaders of the clan and Neytiri, and he has to confess.
He admits that he knew the machines were coming all along.
He admits he was originally sent to learn their ways, only so he could engineer their relocation. The betrayal just shatters the clan.
Neytiri's reaction is pure, visceral heartbreak. She trusted him implicitly, and now she realizes their entire relationship was built on a foundation of corporate espionage.
She screams at him, casting him out, telling him he will never be one of them. The warriors violently subdue Jake and the lead scientist, tying them to ceremonial posts at the base of the massive tree.
They are completely neutralized just as the human armada arrives.
The military operation is a masterclass in asymmetrical warfare. They lead a fleet of heavily armored gunships. They don't even attempt a ground assault.
They approach from the air, completely bypassing the Na'vi's tactical advantages.
The Na'vi warriors are firing their longbows, but the arrows are just shattering against the thick, armored glass of the human ships. It really highlights the vast technological disparity.
The military orders the deployment of tear gas into the massive hollows of Hometree. He uses chemical agents to flush the non-combatants, the elderly, the children out of the root systems.
And once the structure is clear of the bulk of the population, he escalates to high-explosive incendiary missiles.
The destruction of Hometree is apocalyptic.
The missiles target the massive structural pillars of the tree. This organism that has stood for tens of thousands of years groans, splinters, and begins to collapse in on itself.
It is a terrifying cascade of crushing wood and fire. The Na'vi are scattering in absolute terror as their sky falls.
We have to analyze the psychological devastation here. This isn't just the destruction of a residential building.
For the clan, Hometree was their anchor. It was their history, their community center, and the physical manifestation of their connection to the planet.
Destroying it is an act of cultural erasure. It is designed to shatter their collective spirit.
In the chaos, dust, and falling debris, the patriarch is struck by a massive piece of shrapnel. Neytiri finds him in the ash, mortally wounded.
With his final breath, he hands her his bow, transferring the responsibility of leadership and protection to her.
When Jake, having been cut loose in the panic, approaches to try and help, Neytiri pushes him away with absolute venom. She has lost her father, her home, and her trust. Her world is entirely broken.
Following the destruction, the human forces return to Hell's Gate, having successfully cleared the ore deposit. Jake and the science team are forcibly disconnected from their avatars and thrown into the base's holding cells for treason.
The corporate machine has won.
But the narrative pivots on the actions of a few dissidents. A rogue combat pilot who refused to fire her weapons on Neytiri decides she cannot be complicit anymore.
She stages a breakout, she knocks out a guard, frees Jake and the scientists, and they hijack a transport helicopter.
Their objective is to airlift the mobile link shack, a transportable version of the avatar pods, deep into the mountains, where the intense magnetic fields will scramble the military's tracking sensors.
But the escape is not clean. The head of security storms out onto the tarmac without an exopack. Holding his breath in the toxic atmosphere, he fires his assault rifle at the fleeing helicopter.
He manages to pierce the fuselage, and the lead scientist, Grace, is hit in the abdomen.
It's a severe arterial wound. They get to the mountains, and Jake links back into his avatar, but he knows human medicine cannot save her.
His only option is to bring her to the Na'vi, to ask the matriarch for a biological intervention.
Wait, I need to push back on this. Jake knows he is a complete outcast. The clan just watched his people incinerate their home. If he walks up to their sacred site, they will execute him on sight.
Right.
How does he possibly think they will listen to him, let alone perform a complex healing ritual on the leader of the human science team?
Well, he doesn't think they will listen to Jake Sully, the disgraced warrior. So he realizes he has to transcend that identity. He must utilize their own cultural mythology to force them to listen.
He decides to attempt something that borders on suicidal. He aims to bond with the great Leonopteryx,
The apex predator of the Pandoran sky, a creature with a wingspan the size of a commercial airliner. The Na'vi call it the last shadow, because if its shadow falls on you, it is the last thing you will ever see.
In the entire recorded history of the Na'vi, only 5 individuals have ever managed to bond with it. They are messianic figures who unite the clans during times of great sorrow.
Jake understands that if he rides this creature, he bypasses the politics of his betrayal. He takes his banshee and flies high above the clouds. He locates one.
He doesn't fight it from below. He uses the blinding sun, dives from above, and literally drops off his banshee onto the back of this massive, thrashing monster.
It is a leap of desperate faith. He forces the neural connection. By dominating the ultimate predator, he proves an undeniable purity of spirit. He bypasses rational judgment and taps directly into their deepest spiritual reverence.
The surviving clan members have gathered in the deep caldera of the Tree of Souls, their most sacred site. They are chanting, grieving.
Suddenly, this massive, terrifying shadow sweeps over the canyon. The creature lands right in the middle of the clan. The warriors draw their bows in panic, but then Jake steps off its back.
This shift in the clan's demeanor is instantaneous. The hostility evaporates into sheer, unadulterated awe. Even the new clan leader, who vehemently hated Jake, lowers his weapon and bows.
Neytiri approaches him. The betrayal is forgiven because the intervention of the planetary consciousness is apparent. She tells him she was afraid for her people, but she isn't anymore.
By returning on that beast, he has proven his allegiance to the planet.
Jake immediately uses this divine authority to beg for the scientist's life. He carries her dying human body and her avatar body to the roots of the Tree of Souls.
The matriarch agrees to attempt a transfer, and this ritual is fascinating from a biological perspective.
The Na'vi use the glowing, thread-like roots of the Tree of Souls, which are basically exposed neural synapses of the planetary network.
They drape these roots over her human body and her avatar body, attempting to upload her consciousness, her neural pattern into the planetary network, and then download it into the healthy avatar brain.
It's the ultimate expression of a biological internet. But her human body is too weak. She has lost too much blood. The transfer fails, and her human body dies.
But right before she passes, she opens her eyes, looks at Jake, and she uses her last breath to confirm that the planetary consciousness isn't a myth, but a tangible reality.
She experiences the upload of her own consciousness into the network.
Her death fundamentally changes Jake. He is no longer just trying to survive. He is mobilizing for war.
He knows the military will come for the Tree of Souls next. So he uses his legendary status to do what hasn't been done in generations. He mounts the massive predator and flies across the continent.
He rallies the horse clans of the plains, the banshee clans of the coastal crags. He unites thousands of Na'vi warriors into a massive indigenous army.
And back at Hell's Gate, the military is monitoring this buildup on satellite imaging. They do not view this as a defensive posture.
They interpret it as a massing threat that must be preemptively annihilated.
The head of security outlines a brutal strategy. He recognizes that the Na'vi's strength lies in their cultural cohesion, so he decides to strike at the heart of their spirituality.
He retrofits a massive mining shuttle, a ship designed to carry hundreds of tons of ore, and loads it with pallets of highly volatile mining explosives.
His plan is to fly this makeshift bomber to the Tree of Souls and detonate the payload, cratering their most sacred site and shattering their racial memory forever.
This sets the stage for the final, desperate confrontation, the battle for Pandora.
On one side, you have the pinnacle of human industrial warfare. Fleets of heavily armored gunships, mechanized infantry, and the massive bomber shuttle.
On the other, you have a vast coalition of indigenous warriors armed with bows, riding winged beasts and armored horses.
Before the battle, Jake performs one crucial act. He connects his cue directly to the Tree of Souls. He doesn't ask for a miracle. He asks the planet to access the dead scientists' uploaded memories.
He asks the planet to look at what humans did to Earth, how they left it a barren, toxic wasteland, and to realize that if the humans are not stopped here, they will do the exact same thing to Pandora.
Neytiri tells him it's useless, that the Mother Goddess does not take sides. She only protects the balance of life.
But Jake's argument is that the balance of life is precisely what is facing imminent extinction.
The battle begins, and it is a slaughter. Jake leads the aerial assault, diving through the human formations. The Na'vi fight with astonishing bravery.
They are dropping onto the gunships, firing arrows into the exhaust vents. But the technological gap is just too wide.
The human military utilizes thermal targeting, heavy machine guns, and disciplined formations. The Na'vi ground forces, charging on dire horses, are met with a wall of fire from the towering amp suits.
The aerial forces are being shredded by rotor blades and autocannons. The indigenous resistance is rapidly collapsing.
Jake is watching his friends die. The new clan leader is killed boarding the shuttle. Neytiri is dismounted, trapped on the ground as the mechanized infantry closes in.
The massive bomber is steadily approaching the Tree of Souls. Jake's coalition has failed. It looks entirely hopeless.
But then the environment itself shifts.
We talked earlier about the planet being a biological network. What we witness here is the activation of a planetary immune system.
Yes. The ground begins to tremble. Suddenly, bursting from the tree line come hundreds of armored hammerhead beasts, charging with unstoppable momentum.
They crash directly into the human amp suit formations, crushing the metal walkers like tin cans.
It's akin to a macrobiological immune response. The planet recognizes a pathogen that is threatening its core systems, and it mobilizes its defensive cells.
And it's not just the herbivores. Swarms of predators flood the battlefield, tearing into the ground troops. The sky darkens as a massive flock of wild banshees dive bombs the human gunships, overwhelming their rotors.
The planet heard Jake. The ecosystem has overridden its own internal predator-prey dynamics to fight a common enemy. Nature is violently balancing the scales.
The human forces are completely routed by the sheer volume and ferocity of the wildlife. It shatters the military's tactical doctrine. They believe they were fighting a localized tribe of humanoids. They discover they are fighting a single, massive, interconnected organism that has finally decided to defend itself.
Amidst the chaos of the planet fighting back, Jake manages to board the massive bomber. The payload doors are opening.
He fights his way to the turbine engines, pulls the pins on a cluster of grenades, and throws them into the intakes.
The massive ship loses propulsion and crashes into the mountains before it can drop its payload.
But the head of security is a survivor. He escapes his falling command ship in his mechanized amp suit. He is no longer operating on military logic. He is driven by pure, vindictive rage.
He knows exactly where to strike to hurt Jake. He stomps through the forest, tracking the signal back to the mobile link shack, where Jake's vulnerable human body is lying in a trance state.
Jake, in his avatar body, arrives just in time to intercept him. And the final duel is incredibly brutal. It is bone and sinew against hydraulic steel.
The Colonel is wielding this massive metal combat knife, slashing at the Avatar. Jake is using speed and agility, but he is outmatched by the machine's sheer power.
The machine manages to pin Jake, But instead of killing the Avatar, the Colonel turns his attention to the shack. He recognizes the true vulnerability. He smashes the reinforced window of the link unit.
And the toxic Pandoran atmosphere immediately floods into the shack. Inside the pod, human Jake starts violently coughing, suffocating on the toxic air.
Because the human brain is starving for oxygen, the Avatar body outside loses its motor functions and collapses.
The machine stands over the paralyzed Avatar, raises its massive knife, and prepares to deliver the killing blow.
But Neytiri, having survived the ground battle, arrives silently. She draws her father's massive longbow, a weapon requiring immense strength, and sinks two ancient, heavy arrows directly through the armored glass of the amp suit and into the Colonel's chest.
Man finally falls. The machine dies.
But the threat isn't over. Inside the shack, human Jake is dying. His oxygen levels are critically low. Neytiri realizes what is happening. She forces her way into the toxic environment of the shack.
This is a monumental moment. She has only ever known Jake in his towering, powerful Avatar form. Now she is faced with his true human reality. A frail, atrophied, broken man choking to death on the floor.
She scrambles to find the emergency oxygen mask and slams it over his face. Jake takes a massive, agonizing breath. He stabilizes.
Neytiri cradles his small, fragile human body in her arms. They look at each other across the clear plastic of the oxygen mask.
And she gives him the traditional Na'vi greeting of true sight and acceptance, but the context elevates it so much.
She isn't just looking at him. She's seeing his most vulnerable, flawed self, and she is accepting him entirely. The physical vessel is irrelevant to the spiritual connection they share.
The aftermath of the battle sees a complete reversal of power. The surviving humans, stripped of their weapons, are marched onto their remaining shuttles.
They are exiled, sent back to their dying gray Earth. Only a few select scientists who respected the planet are permitted to stay.
Which brings us to the culmination of Jake's journey. The final scene takes place back at the Tree of Souls. It is a quiet, deliberate ceremony.
Jake's human body and his Avatar body are laid side by side on the bioluminescent moss. The entire plant is gathered.
The glowing, silken roots of the tree slowly extend and wrap around both bodies, creating that biological bridge, just as they try to do for the scientists.
The intention here is permanent transfer. Neytiri kneels beside Jake's human body. She gently closes the eyes of his human form for the last time. A tense silence follows.
The roots pulse with intense light, signifying the upload and download of consciousness across the network.
The narrative focuses incredibly tight on the Avatar's face. We wait. And then, the yellow eyes snap open. The transformation is complete.
So we have to pull back and examine the profound implications of this narrative, because the most striking theme is the exploration of identity.
Jake Sully started as a man defined entirely by what he lacked. His mobility, his brother, his purpose. The corporate structure viewed him as a biological key, a means to an end.
Exactly. I keep coming back to that question you asked at the beginning. When does the costume become the identity?
Through the Avatar, Jake didn't just put on a biological diving suit. He slowly shed the cynical, disconnected culture of Earth.
He learned to perceive the world, to participate in it, rather than just extracting value from it.
So at the end, when those eyes open, is he an alien who was finally freed from a human body?
I would argue that his physical form finally caught up with his psychological and spiritual evolution. He willingly abandoned a species that defines its success by its ability to conquer and consume, in order to join a species that defines its existence by its capacity to connect.
Let's contrast those two worldviews. Look at the human colony. They look at a majestic, ancient forest, and their immediate instinct is to calculate the board feet of timber, or the market value of the ore buried beneath the roots.
It is a terrifyingly transactional view of life.
And it is a doomed worldview. The humans destroyed their own biosphere through this exact methodology. They learned absolutely nothing from the death of Earth, and they brought the exact same mechanical, imperialistic mindset to an alien paradise.
They view nature as an adversary to be paved over, whereas the Na'vi view nature as a literal biological internet.
They understand that the energy of life is only borrowed, and it must eventually be returned to the network. They hunt, sure, but they do it with reverence and restraint, understanding their place in the food chain rather than trying to exist outside of it.
This is the core tragedy of the human mission. The science team represented the alternative path. They represented the path of understanding, of scientific curiosity and empathy.
They recognized that the biological network of Pandora was infinitely more valuable than the rocks buried in the dirt.
But the military-industrial complex, driven by the demands of quarterly profits, couldn't wait for understanding. They demanded immediate control.
It is a devastating irony. The humans possessed unimaginable futuristic technology,
Mhm.
interstellar travel, genetic engineering, mechanized warfare.
Yet they were spiritually, emotionally, and ecologically primitive compared to the people they looked down upon.
The Na'vi possessed a technology far more advanced, the technology of empathy, of true biological and spiritual integration.
Jake's final choice is the ultimate rejection of that human emptiness. He allows his human body to die because the world it came from offered him nothing but trauma and a transactional existence.
He chooses the world where every breath he takes, every step he makes, every creature he encounters is part of a shared, sacred network. He chooses connection over extraction.
And that choice forces us to look closely at our own reality.
It really does. Jake Sully left his humanity behind because he found something better. But think about the trajectory of our own society. We are constantly building better machines, better screens, faster ways to extract resources from our own dying planet.
If we eventually render this world completely uninhabitable, and our only means of survival is to upload our consciousness into synthetic bodies just to breathe the toxic air we created.
Have we actually survived? Or are we just the digital ghosts of a dead world, haunting our own ruins? It's a question of what makes us truly alive. The vessels we build to survive the dark, or the connections we forge in the light?